Hello. Today I want to introduce you to a different area of our homestead and one that I'm really looking forward to developing. Let's have a look at a cut flower garden. I'm Zorab and this is Byther Farm. Here behind me is the area that I'm going to use for cut flowers. It won't have just cut flowers in it. It will have some areas of the food forest in it too, because everything here needs to be productive at one level or another. And I am going to grow cut flowers in the hope that I can sell them. But if I can't, they'll be attracting pollinators to pollinate the fruit trees and fruit shrubs that will also be around. I have drawn up some plans for this area, and I do have lots of ideas for it, but I'm also very conscious that those are likely to change as we start working on the ground. Mostly what's growing here is a combination of weeds and grass. In some areas it's more weedy than others, and in some areas there was some what looks like quite lush grass. It's had sheep and horses on it grazing it, so the ground is really compacted, a bit like it was when we moved into our previous home. So I know that I'm going to be making raised beds here to improve the soil so that I can actually plant in it, and also to define the areas in which I'm going to be growing. My plan is to create beds that are about 4 feet wide and as long as the space will allow, and to put maybe 6 to 8 feet in between each bed. And that's because I'm anticipating a lot of the plants spilling out over the edges of the bed, and I still want to have room to be able to walk through between, get a barrow through between, but more importantly to get a mower through between, because in this area I'm not going to be doing wood chip paths. I'm going to leave them as grass. The field slopes downhill this way, and this is north at the bottom, so it's probably the opposite of what I would choose ideally, but it does mean that I can grow a whole range of plants, from those that will deal with some shade to those that really like the sunshine. The other thing, of course, is that it means the area at the top is likely to be drier than this area, so it also gives me a chance to grow a different range of plants. And this field currently has rabbits visiting it, which means that in my research of what I'm going to grow, not only am I going to grow the things that I like to grow, which may succumb to the rabbits, but I've been doing lots of research of things that rabbits choose not to eat, or that are tolerant of some rabbit nibbles. There are so many new experiences for me growing on this site. I haven't grown on what is effectively a north-facing site before. It just sloped down, so south is at the top of the hill, and actually this gets sunshine for a huge amount of the day. I haven't grown on this scale before. I haven't grown with predators for the plants like rabbits before, so all new things. About 6 or 7 weeks ago, I started moving plants to this site, so that was three to 4 weeks before we moved in. And just over there, put a tarpaulin down on the ground, and as I brought plants up, I stored them on there. And then a week or two later, I bought a lot more plants and stored them in another area further over that way. In this area are some of the larger and more architectural plants that we brought with us. These two are really suffering from a lack of water, and these ones I think this morning I will bring a hose pipe out to, because they're really struggling. Some of them I can see have been nibbled either by sheep when they manage to get in here, or by rabbits, and I'm not sure which one it is yet. But others are absolutely thriving. So I've got one bucket here of strawberries that are struggling, one which are coping well. So we've got at least got some strawberries for the food forest ground level. But over here are the more structural and architectural plants. So things like Fatsia japonica, which is really, really ready to get its feet into some soil. Some cordyline, so we were very lucky to be given several cordyline plants. Some bamboo. I lifted a clump of bamboo from near the duck enclosure in Monmouthshire and brought that with me. There's a very beautiful something like a milk thistle in there. That needs to come out. And that's easier said than done. There we go. Let's pop it into the hedgerow over there. And then there's also some trees. So there's a couple of rowan trees and a hazel and a plum tree. And then over on this side there are things like large currant bushes. This white currant bush is quite large, as is this one. There are lots of dahlias. These are struggling without water. And there's things like echinaceas and a few annuals as well. All of these need plenty of TLC today. The other thing that I've got is an awful lot of cuttings of things like grapevines. So this is from the grapevine that was growing in our polytunnel. And there's at least 6 viable cuttings there. Very pleased about that. Just a whole host of roses and other perennials that will go into that cut flower garden. So in various different ways I'm going to divide this area up. I'm going to provide shelter for some plants and I'm going to allow others to shine. I am going to have a small hedge along the fence to provide some shelter. It'll provide some shade in the very heat of the summer, and in the winter it will provide a bit of a wind block, a bit of a wind break for the plants in here. And then, as I said, there's going to be beds. At the moment I'm thinking they will come north-south and then have some sort of structure, kind of not quite dividing it in two, but breaking it up across that way. And then on the lower parts there to grow in almost a prairie style. So based on the prairies of the world, it's rather large blocks of planting, lots of grasses, lots of textural plants and plants that stay in all winter. And last night, Mr. J and I went to rescue the last of the plants from the tarpaulin to give them a drink. They haven't been watered in all of that time. Now, we have had a lot of rain here, so to some extent they got watered, but in the last few days they really have been struggling. So a lot of them are very dried out. I shouldn't be laughing. Seems an irony that they lasted so long and then the really hot weather in the last few days has got to them and I didn't get to them fast enough. But anyway, I have rescued them now, given them a really good drink, and we'll give them some more water this evening. So here is a selection of plants, most of which I understand rabbits will eat. Well, I know there are rabbits hopping around in that area, and so far not too many of them have been eaten. Now, to me, the joyful thing about prairie style planting is that plants used are likely to be resilient to rabbits. By their very nature, they wouldn't survive in a prairie if they just got nibbled away by rabbits immediately. And I've also been utterly inspired by the work of people like Pete Udolph, who've been creating prairie gardens using lots of grasses, and they're all year round gardens with lots of textures and colours right through the year. This very small selection of plants is nowhere near enough to fill a cut flower garden, but you've got to start somewhere. And these are the ones I've brought with me. Lots of them will be divided and I will be growing lots and lots more from seed. So I'm going to take my cue from nature and work with it and look at what I can grow to produce colourful display, flowers that I can cut, but also grasses and leaves that I can cut. The stars, those plants that shine so brightly for a short amount of time, most of those are around near the house, where I can water them almost daily in this weather. And here are those star plants, everything from Nepetia to dahlias. One of my favourites is a Henrietta. It goes really well with cafe au lait. I've got some lilies and some Japanese anemones and roses and penstemon, and then things like this Shasta daisy, which, although it is very simple to look at, it's great for pollinators and provides a really large clump of white for quite a long time at a height that allows it to be a backdrop to other things. So what has growing all these flowers got to do with growing vegetables? Well, the more pollinators we can attract to the garden, the more predator insects we can attract, the more biodiversity there is, the healthier our plants are going to be. I get a huge amount of pleasure from growing ornamental plants. Look at this rose. Oh, what a beauty. So for me, it's not just about being able to add cut flowers to our veg boxes, or even to be able to offer cut flowers for sale just as bunches. It's also about encouraging further wildlife, more predators, more insects, birds and other small creatures into the garden. And my hope is, over the next 2 to 3 years, that we can create a space that's full of wildlife, full of biodiversity, and is also a pleasure to be in. And so, wherever you are in the world and whatever you've got planned for today, I hope it's a good one. And I also hope you'll join me again next time.